Nigeria, from the dawn of civilization to the edge of war. In today's documentary history, we reveal the entire history of Nigeria from creation to civil war. Part 1, Cold Open. Before it was a country, it was 100 countries. Before it had a name, it had kingdoms older than England. And before the guns of 1967 ever fired, this land had already survived empires, conquerors, and the slow, deliberate invention of itself. Visual. Slow zoom into the Niger and Benue rivers, meeting at Lokoja, the literal confluence that gives the country its shape. This is the story of how more than 300 peoples, the Hausa, the Yoruba, the Igbo, the Fulani, the Ijaw, the Kanuri, the Tiv, and hundreds more, became bound to a single flag drawn by a woman who had never set foot in Africa. It is a story of bronze and brass, of camels and caravans, of missionaries and machine guns, of a fragile independence, and of the fault lines that would eventually crack this giant of a nation wide open. Before we go deeper in today's history, click on the button below to subscribe and turn on your notification bell button. And stay till the end and uncover the real truth about the existence of Nigeria before colonialism and civil war from 1800s to 1900s. Part 2. The land before names. Long before Nigeria existed even as an idea, this stretch of West Africa was already one of the most ecologically varied regions on the continent. Desert fringe in the north, open savanna in the middle belt, dense rainforest in the south, and a sprawling delta where the Niger River finally surrenders itself to the Atlantic. Human beings have lived here for a very long time. Stone tools and evidence of settlement in areas like Iwo-Eleru in the southwest point to communities going back tens of thousands of years. But the first culture to leave behind a signature the world would come to recognize is the Nok civilization. Visual. Photographs of Nok terracotta sculptures. Elongated eyes, elaborate hairstyles, pierced pupils. Named after the village where its artifacts were first uncovered in 1928 during tin mining in the Jos Plateau, the Nok culture flourished from roughly 1500 BC to 500 AD. Its people produced extraordinary terracotta sculptures, human and animal figures with a stylistic confidence that suggests generations of accumulated artistic tradition. Nok sites also show some of the earliest evidence of iron smelting anywhere in West Africa, possibly predating iron technology in much of the rest of the continent. We don't know what the Nok called themselves. We don't know their language, their religion, or why their culture eventually faded from the archaeological record. What they left behind are simply the oldest fingerprints of civilization on the soil that would one day be called Nigeria. Proof that this was never empty land waiting to be discovered. It was already old. Part 3, Kingdoms of Bronze and Faith, If and Benin. By the time European ships would eventually appear on the coast, the peoples of this region had already built kingdoms of remarkable sophistication. Among the most influential was Ile-Ife in the southwest, regarded by the Yoruba people as the spiritual birthplace of humanity itself. The site where, according to tradition, the god Oduduwa descended to create the earth. Between roughly the 12th and 15th centuries, Ife artisans produced some of the most naturalistic bronze and terracotta portraiture in the pre-modern world. Life-sized heads of such anatomical precision that when the German ethnographer Leo Frobenius encountered them in the early 20th century, he initially refused to believe they were African in origin, instead spinning theories about a lost colony of Atlantis. It was, of course, nothing of the sort. It was simply African mastery that a European mind wasn't prepared to credit. Ife's political and spiritual authority radiated outward, and one of the kingdoms that absorbed its influence was Benin, to the southeast, home of the Edo people. Benin grew from a modest city-state into a powerful, centralized kingdom under a line of rulers called the Oba. By the 15th century, Benin City was surrounded by an extraordinary system of earthworks and walls. Some estimates suggest the total length of Benin's walls and ditches, combined with those of surrounding Edo settlements, may have stretched for thousands of kilometers, among the largest man-made earthworks on Earth before the modern era. Inside those walls, Benin's guilds of brass casters produced thousands of plaques and sculptures, many of which centuries later would be looted by a British punitive expedition in 1897 and scattered into museums and private collections across Europe. A wound in Nigerian cultural memory that remains unresolved to this day. Both Ife and Benin were not just kingdoms, they were proof, standing in bronze, that centralized statecraft, monumental art, and long-distance trade were flourishing in this part of Africa centuries before the first colonial administrator ever drew a border. Part 4. The Sahel Empires, Kanem-Bornu, and the Hausa city-states. While forest kingdoms rose in the south, an entirely different political world was forming in the north, shaped by camel caravans and the gold and salt economy of the trans-Saharan trade. Around the Lake Chad Basin, the Kanem-Bornu Empire emerged as early as the 9th century, eventually becoming one of the longest-lived states in African history, enduring, in various forms, for nearly 1,000 years. Its rulers, the Mais, converted to Islam by the 11th century, linking Bornu into the wider Islamic world of trade, scholarship, and diplomacy stretching to Cairo and Mecca. To the west, a cluster of independent Hausa city-states, including Kano, Katsina, Zazzau, and Gobir, developed as fortified trading hubs, each ruled by its own king, each competing and cooperating in shifting alliances. Kano, in particular, became one of the great commercial centers of West Africa, famous for textile dyeing, leather work, and its position astride trade routes carrying goods from the Mediterranean to the forest zone and back. Islam had entered Hausa land gradually, through traders and scholars, blending with existing political structures over centuries. But by the early 19th century, a reform movement would radically transform the region. Usman Danfodio, a Fulani Islamic scholar and reformer, grew increasingly critical of what he saw as corrupt and syncretic practices among the Hausa ruling elite. In 1804, he launched a jihad, framed as a religious and moral reformation, that swept through Hausa land with startling speed. Within a few years, most of the Hausa city-states had fallen, and in their place rose the Sokoto Caliphate, an enormous Islamic empire stretching across much of what is now northern Nigeria and beyond, organized into emirates loyal to the Sultan of Sokoto. By the mid-19th century, the Sokoto Caliphate was one of the largest states in Africa. A sophisticated system of Islamic law, taxation, scholarship, and trade that would still be intact and still resisting foreign conquest when the British eventually turned their attention northward at the close of the century.
Part 5. The Oyo Empire and the Yoruba Political World. In the southwest, a different Yoruba power had eclipsed even Ife in political and military reach. The Oyo Empire, rising from the 15th century and peaking in the 17th and 18th, Oyo built its strength on something unusual for the forest zone: cavalry. Horses couldn't easily survive in the tsetse fly-infested forest belt further south, but Oyo's northern grassland location let it field mounted warriors, giving it a decisive military edge over its neighbors. Oyo's political structure, before such ideas were fashionable in the constitutional theory of Europe. Oyo grew wealthy through control of trade routes and increasingly through participation in the transatlantic slave trade, supplying captives, often prisoners of war and raided populations, to European traders on the coast in exchange for firearms, cloth, and other goods. That same trade would eventually help destabilize the empire. By the early 19th century, internal succession disputes, the rise of a breakaway Fulani jihad state at Ilorin, and years of destructive warfare shattered Oyo's authority, plunging the Yoruba region into decades of internecine wars whose displaced populations founded new cities, including a fast-growing town called Ibadan. By the time the British arrived in force, Yorubaland was not a single kingdom, but a fractured landscape of rival city-states: Ibadan, Abeokuta, Ijaye, and the remnants of Oyo, locked in wars that colonial administrators would later exploit and, they claimed, pacify.